the interest of time, if other folks trickle in, then that's great. If not, then we'll put it on YouTube so that they can watch it later. So thank you for being here. If you hadn't read your email or anything, or read the newsletter, I am the speaker for today. And so I will be presenting on some of the research that I have done on Catch the Next. This was something that Dr. Chavez had mentioned had been of interest to some of our participants. And so I wanted to highlight some of this work. I have put the PowerPoint presentation in the chat box, as well as the article that discusses in more detail the work that I'll be talking about. So let me get this into, you think after a year and a half or almost 2 years in the pandemic, I would be better at this, but here we go. Okay, so I'm talking a little bit about differentiating between learning communities, which I think is a model that anyone who works in a community college or four-year institution is probably very familiar with, and then a community of practice and what those are and how they help inform the work that we do here within the Catch the Next network. And so I have just a very, very brief discussion of these models, how they've developed. I really want to talk about the work of Catch the Next, and in particular, the Ascender program as a way to, think about how I've come to understand these ideas and how I have seen them manifest at our colleges and within the Catch the Next network. And so first of all, just as a little interactive thing, who has heard of learning communities? If you've heard of a learning community, can you use the hand raise function? And then if you've heard of communities of practice, you can use the reaction to give a thumbs up. So I see Maynell says she has heard of learning communities. Ronald is giving me a thumbs up for communities of practice. Maynell, thumbs up and thumbs up. Yeah, so these, I think, have become relatively ubiquitous within theirs, and not particularly new ideas necessarily. And there's been a lot of work, especially learning communities. Whoops, I'm sorry, I keep changing it. Learning communities was something that was very big when I was an undergraduate a while ago. It has been around for a long time. It's a very tried and true, well-tested model for pairing courses together, integrating content and things like that, especially around a theme. And so if you are interested in learning communities and aren't familiar with the research on it, a great primer on learning communities is this History of Learning Communities in American Higher Education by Fink and Inkeles. They've been around for basically as long as institutions of higher education have existed in the United States. Same thing with developmental education. It's been around in some sort of form for hundreds of years. And these might vary in terms of time and duration, but essentially you have a small group of students who are brought together with some sort of focus or curriculum or some sort of common purpose. I have seen learning communities that were organized around major, for instance, or some sort of career goal, ones that might be organized around some sort of topic, and the readings get integrated together. Essentially, one or two or 2 to 3 faculty members integrate their content within each other so that they blend together in really creative or innovative ways. Let's see. And then there's communities of practice. And so this is something that comes out of the work of Lev and Wagner, who are, I believe, let's see. Sorry. I believe Wagner has a degree in artificial intelligence, and Wagner, I believe, is an anthropologist or a cultural anthropologist. And so they published around this idea that look at the social aspects of learning. And so this is something that has been studied and used not just in education, both K-12 education, higher education, organizational learning, leadership, and things like that. But this, at least in theory, has a bit more, it's more of a theory than it is like a program or concept. And so within those, you have mutual engagement. So how people come together, how relationships are fostered, perhaps what the rules of engagement are in terms of how they decide who is part of the community of practice, and what the rules or the guidelines are for how they come together. There's the joint enterprise, which I think is the enacting of whatever, some sort of shared mission or accountability around a mutual goal. So I think if mutual engagement is the what, joint enterprise can very much be the how and the why. And then the shared repertoire are participants, common tools, language, artifacts, histories, the things that help them work toward whatever that shared goal is. And when you use these, I mean, they both use community together. We're talking about some sort of shared enterprise or some sort of shared goal. And so the way that I often interpret the difference between them is that a community of studies and research on the communities of practice are usually focused on the learning processes and sort of not so much the end goal, but how the community of practice got to whatever that end goal was. So what the process was. Whereas learning communities, when you see those, they're often focused on the outcomes of them and what sort of factors made students or made participants successful. And so I think that the commonality of theme is there, and then the assumption of the social aspect of learning, that we are inherently social creatures and that we do our best learning when it is done together. And so how that applies to Catch the Next and to the work that we do within Ascender. For me, I tend to use the word learning communities when I describe the work to people who aren't familiar with Catch the Next, because I think that it helps ground some of the work that we do with students and how content is delivered, particularly within like co-requisite courses. The ways that learning frameworks courses might be integrated with developmental education courses, or the way composition might be paired with another course or things like that. So I think it helps give a language that folks are familiar with to help describe the work that we do. But when I talk about communities of practice in relation to Catch the Next, I think that for me, it helps me to understand why we're here, how we decide what's best for students, and then what the shared goal is for changing students' lives. And so the research study that I provided the PDF in the chat for, and I can share this again at the end for folks who may have come in after I shared it. But I essentially did 12 interviews with faculty members across 6 campuses who had done the Ascender training through Catch the Next. They may have been faculty at various levels of engagement and experience within it. So some of the faculty members, was doing the interviews in the fall. They may have started the professional development institutes that past summer. So they might have just been part of Catch Next for less than 6 months. I was collecting the data in 2016, 2017. So there were some participants who had been involved with us since Catch the Next inception. And so they may have received the official training in like 2011, 2012, 2013. So again, various levels of engagement, of expertise levels. These were faculty members who spanned either teaching learning frameworks or the college success seminars, as well as the developmental reading and writing and composition. Because of the work that I've done and the relationship that I have with Catch the Next, I had access to the training materials and was also able to conduct observations at the professional development seminar. So this was the summer seminar that took place at the UT Austin campus in the summer, as well as the seminars that took place in person in San Antonio. It would be so nice to get back to in-person professional development, I just have to say, because the Catch the Next ones tend to be a lot of fun, a lot just mentally, emotionally, spiritually enriching um, sessions. Yeah, and I can't wait either. So hopefully we will get back to those soon. But so over the course of about a year is where I was collecting and analyzing the data for this. In terms of mutual engagement and shared repertoires, I think that the way that I interpreted Ascender through the lens of this community of practice is that the research on professional development for community college faculty is always very interesting to read, in that most of the literature says that professional development tends to be trash. Tends to be something that folks are required to do, that they don't necessarily get enough of. When I collected my dissertation work that focused on faculty who were getting ready to integrate developmental reading and writing, one of the recommendations that came out with that is that a lot of times institutionally mandated professional development doesn't really do a whole lot. It doesn't reap the benefits that I think that a lot of professional developments intend on doing. And that I think that there's a lot of power in allowing faculty members and staff members to decide what sort of professional development they want to pursue, what their interests are, what skill sets they want to tap into, and things like that, just to help get buy-in for them, so that they feel like they are getting the most bang for their buck, so to speak. And for the faculty members who engaged with Ascender, I think some of the things that they saw were the ways that Catch the Next professional development really breaks the mold in terms of it. So they are given these immersive learning experiences. A lot of times, if you go into professional development sessions with, say, Allegra or Anna, they are asking you as a faculty member to engage in lessons as the student. And then in turn, you will know exactly what it feels like to be a student engaging in this lesson. And they ask faculty members to engage in these metacognitive or reflective exercises to think about, how did you feel doing some of this free writing, or what are things that you can do to maybe change or revise this slightly to make it work for your classroom or your college, or things like that. And so the experiential learning component really differentiated it. Faculty are given this common language and this set of tools, or what Levin and Wegner would call their shared repertoire, to help enact the mission, which is in promoting literacy-based practices to boost the success of underserved students. And so we do things like talk about familia, talk about cariño, and teaching with cariño. And these professional development sessions, I think that when they are held in person, you're able to get a sort of collective sense of purpose and enthusiasm for the program. And so for even newer faculty members who weren't sure what they were doing quite yet, or didn't feel like they were confident in enacting the pedagogical strategies that are outlined throughout the professional development sessions, I think that they felt supported, and they felt like, I'll get there eventually because I have this support for it. And that folks were very gung-ho that this was going to work. This is something that really does show success on our campuses and stuff like that. And so, something that I'll talk about in a little bit is just like, well, how do we keep up that enthusiasm amidst a pandemic when we're only seeing each other in these small little boxes on Zoom like we're doing right now? So within the joint enterprise, I think that these are things that are probably not, you're probably going to say like, yeah, no kidding, Erin, relationships and collaboration matter. But I think that it's also just worth noting that for not just in this study, but for faculty members within the Catch the Next network that I've worked with or that I've talked to, they will say that, the success of this program is in part contingent on being able to have good relationships and collaboration with one another, and being able to have open communication, and having responsiveness with one another, in terms of integrating course content, in being able to lean on each other in times where things just aren't working, or the way I think that we're going right now with the pandemic. Just how do we lighten the load for each other where we can, especially when everybody is just really, really stressed out. And something that does come out, and that I talk about a bit in this article, is just the intensity of the work and concerns about burnout. And so I think that one of the things that helps mitigate that somewhat within the Ascender model is just the way that we try to make it so that multiple faculty members are trained within this model, that they are able to receive ongoing training to support each other. And then also it has happened over the course of the last decade where sometimes we will have faculty members who say, you know what, the intensity of teaching within the Ascended program, as much as I love the program, I need a little bit of a break from it. Just so I don't have to attend Noche de Familia and the campus visits and stuff like that just ends up being a lot. And so how do we keep the work going, and how do we maintain the joint enterprise in a way that keeps it going even when someone needs to step back? And I think that the implication of all of this is that there does end up being a trickle down effect for faculty members. And so faculty members, I think, end up building community amongst each other, sometimes even on the same college campus. Faculty members, especially like say full-time versus adjunct, may not know each other as well as they do, or may not have the same level of trust and of just teamwork and things like that pre-ascender professional development versus post, meaning that after they go through the professional development together, they have built a community or built a familia that can support each other. And some faculty members talked about how that trickles down in their classrooms. So we talk about familia amongst each other as, I'll give an example of, I know Deborah and Juan are on the call. I consider them my ascender familia. We talk about it among faculty and within the colleges as the faculty, the advisors, the support staff. They're their own little professional familias, but then there's also the familias within the classrooms themselves, and the way that students build that community and that trust and that confianza with each other, and how that helps their sense of belonging on their campuses. But some of the faculty members in this study also talk about how like those core values, whether that be the shared repertoire, the teaching lessons that are learned, or just the core values of the class or of the program, percolate into other classes. So even though they're teaching other sections of, say, Comp 1 that aren't considered ascender sections, they still might be talking about familia in the classroom, or they may just say, you know what, teaching with cariño is not just something that I'm going to do with this one subset of these classes. Like, I want to make sure that this is an intentional value and an intentional thing that I express to all of my students, not just my ascender students. And so I think that what ends up being really beautiful about this model is the way that it doesn't just impact the students or the particular sections of the classes of this program. It can end up finding impact or positively changing a whole campus, conceivably. And so some of the things that I've learned is this has just been, I think, reified or strengthened for me over the last almost 2 years of the social aspects of learning and the social aspects of support in group learning processes really can't be underestimated. I think that there's something really beautiful that goes on at the in-person professional developments when faculty members or the advisors are asked to do some personal reflection and then share that out and are able to be really real and authentic with each other, where they might be talking about really personal things, the ways that the pandemic is impacting them, for instance, or just the stresses of life and whatever, and how they can support each other to move through those roadblocks. Again, I've mentioned that a lot of the work on faculty professional development says that so much of it is actually useless. And so far, nobody has ever said that to me about Catch the Next. And I think that for the most part, so everyone that I've talked to can say that these are the things that help me. I come out of these professional developments with a list of books that I'm excited to read and to implement in my courses. I come out knowing new people on my campus or within this network of Texas community colleges that I can learn from, that I can lean on, and things like that. And so, I think that as I was rereading this article, this was something that, as I said, I collected the data in 2016, 2017. So I wrote the article in 2018. It was published in 2019. We're now in 2022. So it's been a while since I've looked at this. And it's really hard for me to look at this work and to not think about it in terms of COVID-19 and online learning and what that means for communities of practice that have had to go online. And what that means, especially in terms of thinking about burnout, Zoom burnout, just the stresses and the traumas and the things that will probably be ongoing challenges for a very, very long time. So something I will make sure to reshare is the PowerPoint and the PDF of this. Yes, and as Anne mentioned, we've also lost students over the course of the pandemic and what that means for our colleges, and just I think just sort of processing the loss. So I will put in the chat the PowerPoint and the PDF of this presentation. Something that I will just highlight is the PDF. This article is for an article that I wrote for the Journal of Ideas and Pedagogy, which is Catch the Next in-house journal. This was based on the dissertation work that I did when I was a student at UTSA. I graduated in 2015. This article is specifically related to Catch the Next and some of the early work that was done when we still only had 3 colleges. Something that I want to go ahead and give a shout out to is that the Journal of Ideas and Pedagogy is getting ready to release a new volume. So that should be happening any day now. We are just making sure that it's formatted correctly and there's no spelling mistakes and all of those last minute details. And we'll be posting that to our website too. We have some wonderful essays. Anne, since she is here, contributed one. We have several other of our faculty members within the Castanex Familia who have submitted essays. We have a poetry section and some book reviews. And so please know that if research and writing is something that you are interested in, please let me or Rafael Castillo know. We would love to be mentors and supporters of you, especially if you've never written before, but you've always wanted to perhaps be a published writer. And then something I will say is that, I have an open IRB here at Iowa State to interview Castanex faculty, advisors, administrators for research purposes. I have always, I've always been open to spending time and taking the opportunity where I can get it to learn from y'all. And so if you are interested in being part of the research process with me, please let me know. You can read the article and I will reshare it in the chat box in a minute. But I'm always interested in being able to learn from our model and then to be able to put research out there so that other folks can learn from us, because I think that the model that we have is really unique and innovative. So while I go ahead and re-input the PDF and the PowerPoint, I can go ahead and transition to Q&A if anybody has it, anyone has any questions. So you can mute yourself or unmute yourself, or you can use the hand raise function and I will be happy to answer any questions. Okay, those are reshared.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What did you also share the benefits of investing in high quality professional development?
No, but that is hyperlinked in the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, well, I don't want to belabor anyone.
Erin, I have a
yes.
question.
Yes.
This is Alejandra. I'm over the phone.
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about all, the concept of learning communities and teaching with cariño and all of the good consequences, the good benefits that we have thanks to that. But I mean, I'm not a part of faculty, but I wonder, I mean, for those new professors that are joining the session, can you please give us an example of how to teach with cariño? I mean, what teaching with cariño means? How can we implement that in the classroom?
Yeah, I think that I think that's something that I think about. I have a couple of different ideas, or a couple of different things that come to mind off the top of my head. I do recall that and this is just in the thinking in the community, in the colleges that have been partners with us. One of my favorite all-time articles was by a professor who used to be at UT El Paso, who wrote about teaching Latinx students, and he was studying community college and four-year students. And one of the things that he just said is, like, we have to realize the material realities of our students and the things that may impede their progress or their ability to go to school and things like that, that they have absolutely no control over. And so one of the things that he gave as an example is, working in El Paso, he had a lot of students who would come over from Juarez to go to school. And he said, like, some days students are just going to have long lines at the bridge, and there's just nothing that we can do about that. And so I think that where the instructor comes into play in that is like, what are the policies and practices within your classroom, whether that be attendance and participation policies, that can make it so that students are not penalized for the things that they have no control over, like a long line at the bridge. I think that a lot of the things that I have learned in the last, 10 some odd years about social justice oriented teaching and things like that is in realizing that some of the practices that might have been really popular when I was an undergraduate student, for instance, are actually really harmful to students and don't do what we think they do. And so something that that comes to mind for me is, when I was an undergraduate, and I even know that I did this as a community college adjunct when I was teaching at Northeast Lakeview in San Antonio, is like, oh, if a student had to miss class, they could provide a doctor's note to have an excused absence and stuff like that. Well, what happens to the students that don't have access to a doctor or to medical care and things like that? How does that disenfranchise them and penalize them for, again, something that they don't have any control over? So I think that something is being responsive to students along multiple realities of their lives, and in doing things that are going to facilitate their success and not hinder it. And sometimes I think we do things that inadvertently hinder our students' ability to be in our classes. And
Thank you.
yeah, and I don't know that anything, I keep talking about the pandemic, but I mean, what have we learned over the last 2 years about our students and how incredibly resilient they are, but how hard things have been for everyone, especially our students. Anne mentioned in the chat, we've lost students, and I think that you can lose a student who is deciding to leave the institution and who is dropping out, but you can also lose a student, meaning that student has passed away. And both of those, I think, are tough challenges for us. Any other questions or thoughts or anything like that?
Hi, I'm Joanne Hymas. I think in addition to being aware of the obstacles that they have to face, yes, being very aware of the obstacles, being aware that the system has not been set up for us, being aware that we don't have the same networking because, well, most of us are first generation college students, and like the students in El Paso, first generation Americans maybe. Also looking at what the students bring and use that when teaching our classes, whatever we teach. So meet them where they're at, learn from them to know how they are going to learn. So for example, in my situation, I was a migrant farm worker. I knew how to read a map and I didn't know how to drive, but I knew how to get from Brownsville to Michigan by reading the map. But I didn't know the difference between references and references. References when you're applying for a job and references when you're writing a paper. So what I'm getting to is that professors should take the time to teach with cariño and learn from their students what they are good at. In my case, I knew how to navigate and read a map. I knew how to call the water department to connect services for my parents. I knew how to translate. So in addition to being aware of the barriers and everything that some of the students have to overcome, also seeing what we can learn from them and everything that they have to offer the world, even if our TSI scores are not college ready.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I'll ever forget a few years back meeting and I don't think Alejandra is on the call anymore. I met a young woman who was studying at ACC, and she was just incredible because she was 18, 19 years old. She was talking to me about effectively being the translator for her parents and for their business, and just the sort of brokering that she did in helping her family, her parents in particular, navigate being small business owners, for instance, and all that, and doing that while she was enrolled at Austin Community College full time. It was really inspiring to see, but also a very big reminder of how comparatively easy I had it in college compared to some of our students.
I think we can really help students too by choosing works that they can relate to. Works that where there are similar challenges and similar problems and struggles that characters have or authors have. I think that really helps them too.
Yeah, something I would add to that, Anne, and that I think just ties to what we're talking about and to what I think is really special about the cariño aspect of Catch the Next is in the last couple of years, and I will attach this. I am sorry if I am tooting my own horn too much. I really don't mean to, but I had done some work where I distributed like a questionnaire amongst community college faculty across the United States, asking them how they felt or how they understood the term culturally responsive pedagogy, which or culturally responsive teaching.
Right.
And I think that what I found and what I've written about, and I will put it in the chat, is that most folks interpret that as like course materials and not teacher disposition. And that when you look at the, if you read Gloria Ladson Billings, if you read Django Paris or Geneva Gay's work, they talk about teacher identity a lot, and in really like trying to develop teachers' awareness about their own identities and their approaches to students, not just how they approach course materials.
No, that's very good. I'm going to copy that one in too.
Yep. So that's in the chat. I hope you find it interesting and useful to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or anything like that? And again, I apologize if you can hear my bulldog. Okay, thank you. He's quite loud.
At least he's sleeping.
He is, yeah. It's very cute. It's just also quite loud.
I took mine to day camp because I had such a full day.
Oh, that's good, because then that also means you'll get a tired dog at the end.
Right, hopefully, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, if you want to stay and chat with me, I'll hang out for a little bit. But other than that, I want to say thank you for attending again. I know that some of y'all might be starting back this week or getting ready to start back next week. I know, know and acknowledge, we may have had the plan to start in person and had to pivot very quickly back to remote learning and things like that. So if I can give you that 19 minutes back of your time to take a breath or make a cup of tea, please do. I wish you all the best, and we will catch up next month, third Thursday of the month, 3 to 4 p.m. And it's been amazing to spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. It's wonderful being with
Bye-bye.
you too.